Inspiration, clarity, confidence, and wholehearted growth strategies. Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the show especially for women discovering, deepening, and expanding their next chapters in business and life. If this is you, then hit subscribe now. I'm your host, Angela Raspass, and I'm so glad you're here. Well, hello there, and thank you for tuning in for another episode in my show. Now, each week when I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about what do I want to share, what's at the forefront of my mind always is what's going to be really helpful and what's going to be really valuable. And so often that's got a lot to do with some of the experiences that I've had within my business and my life. Because let's face it, when we're running these businesses of ours, we are often teaching what it is that we have learned. I often say the next chapters are built on skinned knees, and these knees of mine have been really skinned by the topic that I want to talk to you about today. And that is all about the wonderful comparison trap that so many of us who are in business seem to fall into. It's something that's certainly taken me out by the knees several times over the last few years, really, as I've been building this version of my business. I know it's my Achilles heel, and that's why I've needed to become very aware of it and, in fact, create a simple system that helps me move through it. And, of course, once you've tried something out for yourself and it started to work really well, then you get quite keen to share it with others, because I know for sure I'm not the only one who struggles with this. I see it in my clients. I see it in my kids. I see it all over the place, but it's particularly insidious if you are a business owner, because it can take you so far off your own path. So I really want to talk to you today about how to recognize it and how to move through it proactively if it's something that really can also pull you backwards. So let's have a look about it as an overall concept. I really want to share or start to share with a bit of an analogy. So imagine if there was all these people who were like pressing their noses right up against the window of your home, really peering in through the window. And then imagine if they came straight through the front door and started walking around the rooms and opening the drawers and cupboards and having a pretty good look around. And then, without even having a conversation with you, their shoulders begin to droop and a sorrowful expression comes over their face, and you hear them saying, "My house is really so much smaller and it's really so inadequate when I compare it to this place." Now, their quick conclusion would probably seem even stranger, considering they've only seen half the picture. They've missed several of your rooms. They've got no idea about the renovations that you've done just recently that you'd saved so long for, and so many other pieces that they've probably missed as well. Now, that would seem really bizarre as a behavior, wouldn't it? And yet, my darling, you are highly likely to be doing something similar yourself. We all jump to conclusions and we make comparisons because we are in such a hyper-visible and connected online world today. Now, like the windows and the front door to all sorts of businesses are wide open to us through their websites and through their social media platforms. And so all too often you can find yourself visiting them and obsessing over what services and programs they're offering, how many comments they're getting on their blogs or their Facebook lives, how many people are in their groups, what marketing activities they're implementing, and so on and so on. And occasionally, those sort of surreptitious forays that you're doing there can be positively affirming as you're benchmarking yourself. They can actually trigger up in a good way and help you recognize if there's something that triggers you, then it's something that perhaps you need to or want to develop yourself. So that can actually be a positive thing. You can be inspired by what you see. But in my personal experience and in hearing stories of so many other women, it's actually far more common that these forays could see you tumbling headfirst into that comparison trap. Now, the comparison trap is a really demoralizing place. So if you've been in business for any length of time, or if you've been researching and waiting to start a business, then you'll find that trap is really teeming with what I call the gremlins of doubt. And they make you feel less than, flattened, confused, full of uncertainty, and sometimes even to the point of wanting to give up. Because we all have days when it's really darn difficult in business. Now, you've probably heard the expression that comparison is the thief of joy. And it's really true. One thing by itself exists in and unto itself in beauty until you compare it to something else. It's always that comparison piece that then makes you decide, well, this is less than or better than. And most times it's a really unfair comparison because there's an endless number of people and businesses within your industry that you could compare yourself with or your business with or your achievements with. And it's so easy to do that, especially if you're in innocent research mode. Even that can be a slippery slope because you can get this inevitable sense of being on the losing side because there will always be someone who has done something that you wish you could have achieved by now or feel that you should have accomplished by now. Okay, but there's no timeline for your success because we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. You're really only seeing the tip of the iceberg. You don't have all the facts that underpin their business story. How do you know that that incredible coaching program that you've seen is actually selling? How do you know for sure that the owner of this beautiful website is happy and fulfilled with their work? How do you know that that amazingly engaged Facebook group you're lurking in is actually delivering new clients to its founder? And how do you know that pretty average looking, not that great course is not a huge profit producer for the person who created it? Even if the projected successes you're seeing are true, you might find that you're comparing your business beginning with their mature middle. And you need to pause and ask yourself, is that actually the business that you want anyway? I know one of the things that I've done in the past is I've looked at businesses that belong to women who are at a completely different stage of life. And I could not do the things that they were doing at the time because I had little people around me and it just wasn't realistic. And that's why it's so important to stay in your own lane. What we're looking at over time is you developing yourself, you developing your business. So rather than comparing yourself with others, what I really ask you to do is compare yourself with who you were last week or last month or last year. Really stay connected to your vision. Measure your progress. And really importantly, create more than you consume, especially when you're feeling wobbly. So if this is something that you can relate to, if this is a feeling that you've had, if these are habits that you sometimes fall into in this wonderfully accessible online world, then these 4 simple steps that I use for escaping that comparison trap are really going to be helpful for you. Now, I've developed them and sort of finessed them over the years because, as I mentioned, the comparison queen is definitely the inner critic who has had the capacity to bring me to my knees. Now, she's curtailed my creativity, my confidence, and my courage so many times. So this is why I created this simple system. Now, it brings in a couple of modalities that I've found really useful: acceptance commitment theory and the emotional freedom technique, which I'll talk about as well. So the 4 steps, they all start with N. I love alliteration, and this makes them a little bit easier to remember. So the 4 steps are notice, name, neutralize, and nourish. So the system is really broken into those 2 parts. The first 2 steps, that notice and name, are all about turning up the volume on your awareness. Okay, and the second 2 steps, the neutralize and nourish, those are all about taking action when you find yourself falling into this trap. And you can also use the last step, the nourish step, as a way of almost inoculating yourself against this disease of comparison. So you build yourself up a self-compassion plan that is ready to be used at the drop of a hat. But I'll explain more about that in just a moment. So let's look at the first stage. This is the awareness piece in stage 1, and it is the concept of noticing. Now, to notice means that you become very aware of when you're starting to spiral, of when that comparison trap is getting itself around your ankles. Now, it's often a feeling of heaviness, usually something that you can feel in your body. A lovely friend of mine described this as the body barometer talking to you, and I think that's a great description. Now, perhaps for you, it's your throat constricting. Or perhaps it's that sinking feeling in your stomach. Or maybe you can feel your shoulders drooping, like there's some weight that's descending on them. The feeling is never pleasant when you're in this notice stage. You're recognizing that there is tension that you are now bringing into your body. Sometimes you actually hear yourself sighing, and the next stage lets you know what's coming next. So this is really about tuning into your own body, being aware of what is going on, because it will give you signs that something not so great is beginning to happen. So that's the first stage. Now, when we move into the second stage, we name what's going on. We name the thoughts and we name the emotions, because our emotions are caused by our thoughts. Okay, so I want you to get curious when you notice this feeling, you've got this awareness that your body is starting to get heavy, and that you can now move into identifying that some negative thoughts are happening. You can ask yourself a really powerful question. You can ask, what am I choosing to think that is causing this feeling? Okay, that's the real key word here, is the word choosing, because you have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. You get to choose those thoughts and you can change them. Now, the thing that you're likely to notice is that the thoughts that are coming up are recycled, and they're automatic negative thoughts. They're delivered by your inner critic, in this case, the comparison queen. Now, they're going to be usually some sort of version along these lines. I'm not good enough. My work's not good enough. X person or program or product is so much better. If I haven't made it like that by now, I never will. I'll never have that level of success. My results are pretty pathetic by comparison. It's so much easier for them, etc., etc. All of those negative thoughts start happening. And that's when we ask ourselves, why am I choosing to think? Sorry, what am I choosing to think that is causing this feeling? So when you recognize those thoughts, you can now do something about them. This awareness and this naming gives you power to take action. Because here's the other thing. Your thoughts are what create those emotions, and those thoughts are likely to produce negative emotions like sadness and frustration and shame and disappointment. There's a long list that can go on, and you need to recognize what are the emotions that are coming up for you. Now, you can Google this. There is a brilliant list of emotions that is online, and it tells you all about the different nuances of emotion, like the difference between being a little bit angry and infuriated, or the difference between feeling sad and devastated. I really think it's important for us to have this beautiful depth and breadth of understanding and owning those emotions, so that we can be a lot clearer about how we're feeling and the level of discombobulation that this is actually creating in us when we get stuck in this comparison trap. Okay? Because these emotions will then impact on your behavior, your actions. Okay? And if that happens in this sort of scenario, maybe procrastination is going to jump in, perhaps some copycatting. You'll let go of your own creativity and almost try and emulate someone else's. You might self-sabotage yourself, or you could find yourself playing safe and small because it looks too hard to compete with who else is out there. So those are the two awareness pieces. Noticing what is going on for you, recognizing when you're starting to spiral, and number two, naming both the thoughts and the emotions that are behind them, and asking yourself, what am I choosing to think that is causing this feeling? That recognition that it's a choice is incredibly powerful, and it will make a big difference when it comes to moving things. Okay, so now that we know what's going on, what do we do about it? This is the action part of this we system. And step 3 is to neutralize those thoughts and emotions. This is about unhooking from stories and shifting emotions. And to move those, I use ACT, Acceptance Commitment Therapy, and EFT, the Emotional Freedom Technique. Now, in the first place, ACT, which is It's a form of CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, and it was championed or is championed in Australia by Dr. Russ Harris. Now, Russ is fantastic. I did my training with him about ACT, and I actually did also interview him a couple of years ago, and you'll be able to find that interview with Russ. It's episode 50 on the podcast. It's called Rise Up in the Face of Challenge. You might like to check that one out after you've listened to this episode. So what ACT does is that it allows you to create space between you and those thoughts which are going to negatively influence your behavior. It's about unhooking from them so you can see that they are just thoughts, not immediately and indisputably true. So the part of ACT here, I'll teach you just briefly, is called diffusion. Okay. This simply involves using techniques that allow you to create this space. So here's a couple of examples. There's the old story of I'm never going to make it. Yep, I recognize that one. That's naming your story. It allows you to see that so often the thoughts we have are just recycled. So when you've gathered that awareness and you've worked on that awareness that we talked about in the first step, you will begin to recognize that the same old story, I'm never going to make it, is coming up for you, or whatever the story is. So you literally give it a name. Okay. Another way is to create the space by recognizing, I'm having the thought that I'm never going to make it. Again, what you're doing is creating space. You're not identifying with those thoughts. You're recognizing that you're having a thought. So all we're looking for is space so that you don't fuse with the thought. Another one, which is great, so I'll just give you 3 on this occasion, is to sing that belief to a song, like the birthday song. Look, I'm never going to put myself forward as a singer, but I've done this one often. And to be honest, I also use this around body image as well, because that is another one of the spots where my thoughts and my emotions can sometimes take me over in a wave. So when I recognize what's happening there and I'm looking in the mirror, I will sing the thoughts to the birthday song. I'm feeling fat and ugly today. I'm feeling fat and ugly today. There's the same old story that I'm feeling fat and ugly today. So when I do that and I'm looking at myself in the mirror, I literally can't keep a straight face because it sounds ridiculous, and not just because I'm not much of a singer. But again, what I'm trying to do is I am recognizing that this is the same old story playing over again, and I want to break my thoughts. I don't want to fuse with the story. And just doing that gives me enough space to pull myself out of the potential funk that I could have got into. Okay, so those are 3 different techniques that you can do just to give yourself some space. Now, often that's enough and you can move on to step 4, but sometimes you need a bit more because that deals with your thoughts, but what about your emotions? And that's where EFT, the emotional freedom technique, comes in. Now, it's one of the easiest ways to shift an emotion and release it from your body. Now, EFT is designed to calm your nervous system, to release those emotions so you can connect to that place inside of you where you do have that sense of calm. Now, this is something that I learned again a few years ago, and my teacher was Susan Scarrow, who's up in Queensland. And yes, I interviewed Susan as well. She's on episode 33 of the podcast. It's called Returning to Your Dreams, and she talks about how EFT has certainly helped her and many of her clients. So another episode worth having a listen to. But I'll also, on the show notes for this episode, so you just go to angelaraspass.com/103, then you'll find I'll put in a diagram of where the tapping points are if you want to explore EFT. Now, it's often called emotional acupuncture because what you're doing is you're tapping on the main meridian points in your body. Now, a meridian is like an energy highway in the human body. They're the energy network of our bodies. The lines are the channels where our energy flows. It's our life energy, often known as qi in Chinese medicine. Now, I will not confess to completely understanding how it works. I just know that it does. I've got brand photography happening on Monday, and having photographs taken is not my favorite thing. It makes me nervous. It brings up fears, etc., etc. I don't know if you can relate to this, but it's certainly something that I've experienced each time I go to get branding done. I've used tapping on every occasion to bring those emotional levels down, to allow me to release those fears from my body so I can actually get myself in front of a camera. So that's not the only time when I use EFT. There's many other instances. I love it as a modality because it is portable and it is completely empowering, as in no one has to do it for you. You can do it yourself. Now, I like the version which is called Conscious Choices EFT because it helps you to create a new emotion, a new belief to put in place of the old one that you're releasing. You can certainly just Google that. You can Google EFT. There are 101. That's really underestimating it. Videos that you'll find on YouTube and everywhere else. It's a really well-proven, well-documented modality, and it helps shift that emotion so cleanly and clearly. So I'd really recommend that you have a look at that. Okay, so that is the first state of action that we are taking. We are giving space around our thoughts so that we can recognize them as old stories that are just recycled. And then we've worked on releasing the emotion if we need to do that too with EFT. So now you're on to step 4 in this system. And step 4 is nourish. Now, this is when I really recommend that you have a self-compassion plan already in place. Because when you're nourishing yourself, you're taking care of you in the moment. And it's a really great idea to have this plan sitting around so that you can put it into action when that spiral begins. Now, one of the first steps in a nourish plan, a self-compassion plan, is to get off social media. It's certainly one of the biggest triggers for most women in business, no matter what stage of development you're at. Social media is incredible. It is amazing. It's such an important way that we can connect with potential clients and colleagues around the world. But if we're feeling wobbly, it's also one of the things that can plunge us into comparison incredibly quickly. So, leave, turn it off, log out, remove yourself from the premises. That's one step in nourish. Some other pieces could be changing your state. Now, for me, it can sometimes mean just getting out of my office, outside into the sun. Not possible at the moment here in Sydney. It is raining on Saturday afternoon. But another way could be playing uplifting music. Something that really gets your blood flowing, dancing around a bit, moving your body so that you are out of that state that you were in previously. Another way is to connect to your vision. Now, you can't see it here in my office, but if I point to the left, I might take a photo and pop it up on Facebook or Instagram. I have a beautiful corkboard here, and right in the middle of it is a beautiful picture of a lighthouse. And over the top of the sky alongside it, I've written my vision, like what my next chapter business is all about in terms of who I'm here to help and how. So when I get myself in those spirals, one of the ways that I pull myself out is by reminding myself why I'm here, who I'm here to help, and how. And when I get off self in that way and focus instead on who I'm here for, it inevitably lifts me again, because it's connecting me back to that purpose and vision, which is what we're all about, that contribution and fulfillment. So that's a way of nourishing myself as well. Another one, reverse gapping yourself. This is really tied to what I was saying about comparing yourself to last week, last month, last year. We so often are so focused on looking forward about where we've still got to get to that we forget to look back and recognize how far we've come. So please treat yourself kindly here. Reverse gap yourself. It so often helps you recognize you're doing a darn great job. So another piece of that is visiting your fabulous file. Now, if you've been in my world for any stretch of time, you'll recognize this is something I talk about often. It's a hugely recommended activity. It's where you collect up all of your positive feedback and achievements, goals that you've reached, conferences you've attended, cards from your kids, everything that makes you recognize that you are doing a great job. I physically have them in a beautiful big box in my office, and I recommend and in fact almost insist that every one of my clients creates this as well. When I'm feeling a bit wobbly, I literally roll around in that fabulous file for a while, and it reminds me again that this too will pass. This doubt, this concern, this fear, this comparison, it can slip away because there is so much evidence that I am making a positive impact on the world. Now, I want that for you as well. So please create yourself a fabulous file. And the last suggestion is to call your belief buddy. Now, a belief buddy is someone who understands your vision and supports your efforts always. It is fabulous to have just one. If you've got more than one, you are blessed. But if there is one person that you can call up and say, I'm having a moment, the comparison trap is nibbling at my toes, can you help me? Remind me that I'm brilliant. Remind me that I'm on purpose. I just need to hear it for a moment. Now that can, in and of itself, lift you up. It'll break the cycle. And of course, you do the same thing for your belief buddy when they need it. So those are half a dozen different ways in which you can nourish yourself to help you move out of that comparison trap. And certainly think of other ones. So this is why it's a great idea to have them in advance worked out so that when this comparison trap grabs you, you have some actions that you can take that will bring you out of it quickly. So there were those 4 steps, just to going over them again to make sure that you've got them implanted in your memory, is to notice, recognize when the tension is coming so that you can do something about it. Step 2, name it. Identify the thoughts and emotions that are happening so that you, again, can take action where you will neutralize those thoughts, create some space so that you can see them for the repeated stories that they are. You can use ACT, acceptance commitment theory for that, and you can also use EFT, the emotional freedom technique. And then nourish the heck out of yourself with all those different ideas that can help pull you back into positivity, recognizing that comparison is something that happens to us all, but we don't have to stay in the trap. Okay. Now, as much as I'd love to tell you that the technique or the methodology or the modality instantly and forevermore transforms your misbeliefs and negative self-talk and comparison, I'm afraid I haven't. This is what I've come to understand, though, is that their ferocity and the frequency with which you fall into those traps can be softened when you do regular mind gardening, like what we're talking about here. Okay. So it is really the more often that you practice these 4 steps, you will find yourself getting out of that trap quicker and sometimes being able to see it coming and walk around it. And that's what I'm after for you, because at the end of the day, you and your business are unique. Okay? Even though there may be many other people within your industry, none of them has your specific story, your experience, your way of looking at things. And so comparison is really irrelevant because you are here to make a unique contribution in your next chapter. And that's what I want you to remain focused on. Okay? Because what you've got to offer us is beautiful. And there are definitely women, men, children, whoever your clients are, your audiences, they're out there looking for you. I want you to be a lighthouse in the market for your most aligned clients to find you. And they cannot do that when you are sitting at the bottom of the comparison trap, concerned that you're not living up to what somebody else is doing. Okay. The last piece really I wanted to share with you today is the importance of a community. Having a community that you can lean into when the doubt does hit you, again, no matter what stage of business you're at, is incredibly fortunate. It's one of the reasons why a key part of my business is to run masterminds. Now, those are small groups of women who work together over an extended period of time, supporting each other as we grow our businesses. Now, that don't start again until February in 2020, but I'll be talking about those more over the next couple of months, and you're most welcome to have a look and see if it feels like a good fit for you. But in the meantime, pop across to Facebook. We do have a closed community called, not surprisingly, Your Next Chapter Community. And that is a place where you can land softly and be put back together again when you've got stuck in that comparison trap. It's full of lovely, wholehearted women who are also in that space where they're combining fulfillment and contribution in the next chapter of their business. And I'm sure you'd love being there. Okay, so really that's what I wanted to share with you today. I hope that you can take the time to observe when comparison does come into your world and to use that system to help you move out of that trap before it stops you from creating and contributing in the way that I know you are here to do. So thank you again for spending your time here with me today. I'd love to know if this 4-step system is helping you. Pop across to the Your Next Chapter Facebook group. Drop me an email. You can always get me Angela@angelaraspass.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And until next time, have a wonderful day. Take care. Thanks for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love you to share it, perhaps leave a review in iTunes, and of course, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're looking for your own business breakthrough at the moment, then I've got something special for you. Visit angelaraspass.com/breakthrough guide. That e-guide takes you through the 4 key gaps to close that may be stopping you from reaching the next level in your business. I hope it's extremely helpful, and I look forward to talking with you again on the next episode.